Hello, my name is Bruce Anderson. I'm CEO of 24/7 Solar, and I'm here to take you on a short but I hope interesting journey. I'm going to show you a roadmap for how you can get to zero carbon mining. Just a way of framing it and thinking about it so that you're not running blind and you have a plan to get from here to there. So you want to reduce your fuel costs and carbon emissions, but PV and wind can only get you so far. Batteries help, but they're expensive, and you still need gensets. So how are you going to get to zero carbon and do it in a way that's profitable and is safe and risk-free? So imagine a roadmap that uses 21st century technology, is efficient, clean, highly reliable, and of course addresses your ESG targets and does so quickly. It's a rational approach, it's profitable, it's flexible, and it's low risk. Well, you don't have to imagine it yourself. If you've already got some wind and PV, you've already got something like this that looks like a microgrid. There's your gensets and PV and wind and batteries. And what we're going to show you is how you can get rid of those gensets where we introduce one of two products, either our Heatstore Battery, long duration battery, or our 24/7 solar plant. And so what we're looking at is a ROI-driven profitable approach from day one. You phase in the low-hanging fruit kind of technologies like PV and wind and so on. And then but you still need your gensets, don't you? Because during that bad weather when there's nothing left from the renewable sources of power, all your gensets have to come on. So we're going to show you how to phase those out with our 24/7 baseload equipment. And then ultimately down the road, our equipment still needs to burn some fuel, not much. But down the road, you can switch to zero carbon fuel, green hydrogen. Now, you're not going to do that with renewables, as you probably know, because it takes a lot of carbon to make them, and they produce a lot of carbon and other emissions when they burn. So don't get fooled. So these are the two products. And they're both zero carbon. Our Heatstore Battery stores your excess wind and solar power as heat. And then for up to 20 hours, it produces power back. And even when it's fully discharged, it keeps producing power. And I'll show you how. The 24/7 solar plant is for sunnier locations. The battery is where it's windy, where you don't have 300 sunny days a year, but you have enough sun to use PV. And this one, this 24/7 solar plant takes sunlight and produces electricity. Both products are based on this, what we call 21st century genset, our heat to power turbine, heat to power. And it's at the core of both our battery and our solar plant. It's a capstone turbine, super reliable, over 10,000 sold, can burn almost any fuel, integrates nicely with your other power equipment, is very robust, and it has high uptime. It only takes a couple hours a year for each turbine of maintenance. It's an air bearings, doesn't require lubrication. How does it do that? How does it take ambient pressure hot air and without any combustion produce power? Well, the heat can come from almost any source, and we show you several here. And then there's an optional duct combustor if its temperature is not high enough. We prefer temperatures approaching 1,000. And basically what we've done is replaced the combustor with this very, very proprietary high temperature heat exchanger. So the high temperature heat comes in, transfers it to the compressed air, which then goes to the turbine, which is exactly what a combustor does, right? So here's our first product, the Heatstore Battery. could buy Gensets. The reason for this is that this container here, about the size of a shipping container, stores the heat. But first of all, this electric resistance coil here converts your excess electricity into heat, and that heat is stored in here. And then when you need the electricity out of the system, out of this battery, the hot air goes to the turbine, and the turbine produces electricity. And then there's an inline duct combustor that can continue to operate 24/7, highly dependably, burning just a modest amount of fuel to get you through those bad weather days. Multi-decade life, 20, 30, 40 years, very little loss of performance. It's pretty 21st century stuff. The economics are really impressive. Here you see the Heatstore Battery as part of the Microgrid. And what we've done is compared three scenarios: the genset only, gensets with PV and batteries, and then our Heatstore Battery with PV and conventional batteries. And here's the summary. As you can see, gensets only is almost 3 times more carrying cost, annual cost of ownership, compared with the Heatstore Battery plus PV and batteries. So, ask me for a copy of this presentation so you can study these numbers more closely. The solar plant, baseload, zero power carbon. Here we finance these. They're very simple. I'm going to show you how in a minute. 400 kilowatts, 600 kilowatts thermal at industrial grade heat, 250 C. Very few moving parts, just a couple dampers and blowers. Replace the gensets, of course. Fairly small footprint. That's a lot of power. And here's how the plant works. It takes heliostats, sun tracking mirrors, reflect to the top of the tower, simple truss tower, where this device up here converts the sunlight into heat and then heats air to almost 1,000 degrees. The hot air comes down that red pipe. Roughly half goes to the storage system. Roughly half goes to power the turbine in real time. And then the heat storage, just like the Heatstore Battery, gives its heat back to the turbine at night to power it. Okay, same comparison. Here's the microgrid with a 24/7 solar plant as part of it. And you can see here again, gensets cost the annual cost of ownership is almost triple. We're everywhere in the world you want to be. We have great people on our team. I call your special attention to Progros in Chile for the South American market. I know a lot of you know this company, highly respected. And we're there not only to install for you, but also maintain, operate as needed. So let's get back to this roadmap. ROI-driven, profitable from day one. You phase in, again, these low-hanging fruit of clean energy technologies, and then phase out your gensets over time with a 24/7 solar solution. And as the final piece, convert over to green hydrogen when it makes economic sense. We work with you to do I'll say pre-feasibility, pre-roadmap concept that helps you wrap your head around this whole notion of how do you go from where you are today to a zero carbon mining operation. We offer complete turnkey solutions. We bear all the risk. You can own it, we can own it, we can sell you the power, we can lease, sell you the power, whatever works best for you. So do come, talk to us. At least get more information or get a copy of this presentation. You can contact me right here, Bruce.Anderson at 247solar.com. Or if you still do business the old way, just give me a call. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your attention. And with that, feel free to ask me questions. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. We're delighted to have Bruce joining us live to take a few of your questions. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you, Adrian. It's great to be here.
We have a question from the audience from John Brinkhurst. How and why is Heatstore Battery better than competitors' offerings?
Well, first of all, it's the only long-duration battery that's tailored in size to the mining industry. All the other batteries out there that a mine would typically use are expensive, short-term lithium-ion batteries, and they're the same like electrochemical kind of composition. They're very expensive. They're usually so expensive they're only used for 30, maybe 60 minutes, an hour, maybe 2 hours, and that just doesn't get you to zero carbon. You know, the challenge for every mine is how do you get to zero carbon, and PV with a couple hours of battery just can't get you there. Wind with a couple of hours of batteries just won't get you there. You need a longer duration battery that can operate for 10 to 20 hours in order to get to zero carbon, and then a battery that can continue operating even when it's fully discharged as a way of replacing the gensets.
Excellent. Thank you, Bruce. And we have a couple of other questions from Dion Morel King about Heatstore. Does Heatstore work better in cold or hot environments? And does the Heatstore system, it's the same question. Does Heatstore work better in cold or warm conditions?
Actually, it's interesting. That's a good question, because on the one hand, you've got the Heatstore that loses heat. You've got the storage, right? And, just like your thermos, it loses heat. Now, it loses heat much, much, much more slowly than your thermos does, because it's large and super, super insulated, losing only a couple of percentages of its heat per day. But it operates better in cold weather because turbines operate better in cold weather. Turbines are just more efficient, and I could go into why it's a mechanical, technical thing, and I won't do that here. But cold weather is good.
And another question about Heatstore, Bruce. It's from Ulf Meir. He says, I may have missed this when you spoke about Heatstore, but what is the biggest capacity for a single unit?
Well, we have a standard unit. That doesn't mean we can't make it larger, but our standard unit, operating at full power, will operate for 9 or 10 hours when it's fully charged. It can get to longer term in two ways. One is that we can add additional thermal storage, double it, triple it, and so on. And then we can also operate the turbine at less than full power to extend the range. So it depends on the operating conditions at the plant, at the mine.
Okay. And Bruce, if you have an off-grid remote mine that doesn't have a very long life of mine, say 8 years, can you still provide the financing for a shorter life of mine for these projects?
It's totally an economic decision. I will say there are a couple of conditions that make it possible to do a shorter mine, a shorter life. Number one is, and let me first of all say that the life of a mine is also dependent on the economics. We significantly improve the economics of mines because we slash the fuel costs. So I won't answer that question without at least adding that, because it's so important. But it does have to do with the conditions of the mine. It has to do with, for example, the load of the mine. Is it 24/7 more or less, or vary a lot? What is the cost of the fuel? The higher the cost of the fuel, the better the economics with our system, because we're saving so much fuel. At any given mine site, we're saving up to 90%. And so that's just slashes your operating costs. And it also depends on sort of where you are. How movable is our equipment? Our equipment isn't mobile, but it's movable to another site. So that would have to be taken into account in the economics and the economic analysis and agreement with the mine.
Excellent. We're just running out of time, but I would encourage attendees to reach out to Bruce and his colleagues directly. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Really appreciate being here. You have a great audience and a great conference.
Thank you.